As promised in the last video about Acheron and Adventuring from Honkai Star Rail, today we're going to talk about Sunday, our most beloved chicken wing boy. It's pretty clear from early on that he would be the antagonist of the Panacony story. I mean, what else do you expect from basically a pope in a fantasy game? But Sunday is not your average religious zealot. His motivations are selfless. All his actions stem from a place of love and protection for his sister, for random dwellers in the dream, and even for the future of Panacony. So even at his most antagonistic moments, I can't bring myself to hate this guy. I bet more people would dislike Adventuring rather than him. The way the game sets up the three central characters of Panacony is very structural. Let me show you this very well-made graphic that took me a whole minute to make. So the horizontal axis is the will for charity. The more to the right, the more you want to help others, even at the expense of yourself. The vertical axis is the will for freedom. The more to the right, the more you respect the freedom of others and believe everyone is entitled to their own choice. So in the bottom left corner, we have a mixture of two characteristics traditionally considered to be negative. They are as selfish as they are oppressive, doesn't allow for a lot of nuance in a character. In some cases, these characters can be done right, but they are few and far between. Off the top of my head, I'd say Amalthus from Xenoblade 2 qualifies for this, but that's topic for a different video. The other three quadrants are more interesting. Up here, on the top left corner, we've got Adventuring. He's got a radical acceptance of freedom, but no sense of charity whatsoever. He's not doing anything with the purpose of helping others. Even when he goes around handing people money, he has other motives which serves his plan, aiming to get himself where he wants to be. In the meantime, on the top right corner, we've got Acheron. Just like Adventuring, she also accepts the radical freedom of existence, but she's practicing her own freedom in such a way that it benefits everyone other than herself. I go into far more detail about Acheron and Adventuring in the last video, so make sure to check it out if you're interested. Back to our poster boy Sunday. He would fit in the bottom right quadrant, where he is driven by a selfless fraternity, borderline self-sacrificial Jesus complex, but has no respect for individual freedom at all. One of the central differentiating factors between him and his sister Robin, and by extension the differentiating factor between order and harmony, is their view on humanity. It all comes down to this question: if left to their own devices, would people create a better world? Or are they condemned to chaos and failure? Sunday firmly aligns with the latter. This is demonstrated with the three stories he told the Extra Express. The first is about a Charmony dove he and Robin rescued when they were children. When it was set free, it crashed to its death. This represents the suffering caused by nature. The second is about a dream chaser that escaped the punishment of law by lying to Sunday and turned into an oppressor in Panacony. This represents the suffering caused by an individual. The third is about Robin. She got hurt when trying to preach for harmony in a war zone. This represents the suffering caused by a collective. These events are an epitome of Sunday's ideological journey. Many people think Sunday is representative of a religious figure, especially Christianity. And it seems correct on the surface. I mean, we all see how this guy's lines look like they come directly out of the Bible. By the way, the original Chinese lines also use a very archaic way of expression that closely reminds me of the translated version of the Bible. So this is definitely intended by the developers and not only a localization choice. However, I want to argue that Sunday is not the religious representative of the narrative. He specifically said that he is not trying to resurrect a fallen Aeon.
It seems you have misunderstood my intentions. Allow me to clarify. My desire is not to resurrect a fallen Aeon, or become one myself. My sole objective is to create a paradise free from Aeons, where the Order ensures the dignity and happiness of all humanity. A paradise exclusive to us human beings.
Sunday is not a servant of Order. If anything, he is the master of them. The true servant of order is the Dream Master. His name, Gopherwood, is a direct reference to Genesis, where it is stated that God commanded Noah to build an ark out of gopherwood. So the Dream Master, in every sense, is a tool, a building material in the hand of order. But Sunday transcends his teacher's ideology in that he sees that religion is a man-made concept. That despite the religious mythology, it wasn't the divine that created humans, but humans that created the divine. During the final phase of the battle against Sunday, he keeps casting for 7 turns and releases something called, and forgive my bad German here, Im Anfang war die Tat. This is taken from Goethe's Faust, meaning in the beginning was the act. It is a comment on the first line of the Gospel of John, which states, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So Faust is basically saying God is not the beginning of everything, instead human action is. This idea is best expressed by the 20th century philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre when he said the famous line, "Existence precedes essence," meaning that humans don't have a preordained essence by God, which is the position of essentialism. Instead, human action is the starting point, and from their actions, their essence is formed. So back to Sunday, what he takes from his experience before and during Penacony is 2 things. First, the world is a place full of suffering. Second, humans have a natural tendency of the strong preying on the weak, and thus cannot be trusted with their own destiny. From there, the path to the future is simple. If the universe does not have intrinsic and inherent order, then he will manufacture order on his own. What Sunday wants to create is a long tradition all the way from the ages of Aristotle in ancient Greece. He called it a foundational myth, and in the modern philosophy it would be more or less called a grand narrative. The foundational myth is not order itself, it is what builds order. The goal here is to make everyone believe that order is preordained, even though he himself knows that it is not. So in this sense, Sunday is the only one who does not get to live in the ignorant and stagnant bliss that he creates. This is why I say Sunday is self-sacrificial. That dedication is what gives him such immense power as to become an emanator. However, the issue with Sunday's approach is that order is an enforced structure. It has 3 problems. First, it requires constant intervention. Our universe is set up in such a way that the overall entropy does not decrease. Think of a river. It flows ever downward into the sea. An order is like a dam, holding the water in place and stagnant. But dams are not something you can build and forget about. It needs constant maintenance. Just like dams, order is also fighting an uphill battle here. And as Acheron indicates in her 3 questions for the Trailblazer, that vast, lifelike dreamland where everyone can attain the happiness and fulfillment they deserve, it will always fall apart.
Imagine if this splendid dream were fated to fall apart. Friends, family, strangers, followed by the gentle breeze, soaring birds, the stars, and ultimately yourself. Everyone and every face they remember. The joy and the heartaches. The vows sealed and those left hanging. All will inevitably march towards a predetermined ending.
The second problem is that it's restrictive on the individual level. Sunday's vision for the future is a symphony. In a symphony, every note is required to be played at a specific time in a specific way. Within Penacony, everyone is forced to share the same dream of order, with no dream of their own. Dr. Ratio's message to adventuring implies this.
The impossible in the dreamscape is not death, but rather dormancy.
Within a heavily ordered society, you are not allowed to follow the dreams of your own. Instead, you are captured and trapped in a predefined dream of the faceless others. The third and the most important problem with order is that it leads to stagnation. In a symphony, each note sounds beautiful because they were arranged that way, designed that way, forced to be that way. And because of that enforced order, they will always be arranged, always be designed, and always forcefully perfect. When someday that order disappears, every note will lose their beauty as well as the ability to be beautiful. When we were children, we learned to walk by constantly stumbling and falling. Imagine if after the third time we fall down and lie on the ground, our parents just come over and say, "You know what, I think my child is just not born to walk." Then they just give us a wheelchair and let us roll around Professor X style. Sure, we would still be able to move around, but would never gain the ability to walk. Some people would argue, does it matter? I have a perfectly functional wheelchair here. But growth is so much more than just the ability we gain. It is about self-overcoming, through which we become a version of ourselves that isn't so easily beaten by all the pain and suffering in existence. And this is only the growth from an individual perspective. There's also growth in a historical sense. We live in a time where if a child is born healthy, no parent is going to doubt he or she is born to walk. We accept it as common sense, much like we accept the fact that birds are born to fly. However, as Akron points out, birds did not start out roaming the sky. They were once too confined to the land. But through struggles of generations upon generations, they gained what we now consider as a default state.
I like your analogy very much. Indeed, birds are born to fly. But in a distant past, their ancestors could only gaze at the sky in envy. They saw that faraway ray of light from above the heavens, piercing through the clouds and blanketing the earth. And so, time and time again, generation after generation, the birds spread their wings and took to the sky, attempting to touch its ceiling, all because the sun was there.
So if we were to live in a dreamscape where we meet no obstacles and find no challenges against which we constantly test ourselves and improve upon ourselves as a species, we would be trapped in stagnation, forever flightless birds looking up the sky thinking we're just not meant to go up there. When Sunday asks, if the birds are constantly falling and struggling, failing to fly, can they still be called born to fly? He's falling into the mind trap of essentialism again, but in a historic sense. This is an easy trap to fall into because we are always somewhat confined to a perspective that is based on the time we find ourselves in. But you need to consider that nothing is born to do anything. The universe is not a grand design. Our present, though frequently taken for granted, was not granted to us by some cosmic architect. Similarly, neither will our future be granted to us. We will need to earn it ourselves. If we allow ourselves to be trapped in stagnation, our dreams will always remain that, a dream. This is the reason why Sunday was so shocked to hear Trailblazer's answer to the question, why does life slumber?
So, why does life slumber?
Because someday, we will wake up from our dreams.
The end of the dream is inevitable for the dreamers, much like death is inevitable for those who are alive. Adventuring thinks life slumbers because they are not ready yet to face the true death, so they want to be prepared. But individuals are not the only ones making the preparation. We as a people are also preparing for our inevitable end. If the universe is without inherent and intrinsic meaning, then it can and must be up to us to give it meaning. And we cannot do that if we stay in a dream. We will still need to slumber, of course, because in dreams we see beyond our facticity and explore our potentials, but we don't slumber for the dreams. We slumber so that when we wake up from the dreams, we'll know the next step to take in our journey. That is the spirit of the Trailblaze. Finally, I want to add that even though misguided, Sunday is still an admirable and noble soul in my opinion, because he, like Aventuring, like Acheron, is actively seeking meaning in this meaningless universe. What is more terrible, and a lot more common in our modern society, is to be a passenger, just going along for the ride. That's equivalent of being what Nietzsche calls a last man, much like the common dwellers in the beautiful dream, not thinking for themselves or making decisions of their own. So we have reached the end of this episode. Hope you enjoyed it and hope it helped you enjoy this wonderful game even more. People who know me would know that I'm not doing these videos for the likes or even views, but I do encourage you to comment with your opinions. Just like Acheron says, the answer itself does not matter. Similarly, whether you agree with the game's philosophical take does not matter. Whether you agree with my interpretation of the game does not matter. What matters is that you have an opinion of your own. Thank you very much for viewing or listening to this episode. See you next time.